The season is finally over for Houston Dynamo FC. Mercifully comes to an end. Obviously, we know the result that happened in the final game on decision day against the LA Galaxy. It took a couple of days to kind of marinate a little bit over what the season was, give you our final thoughts, and kind of dive into obviously the coaching search that lies ahead, important decisions on player contracts, a very decisive offseason for your Houston Dynamo here on Inside the Hexagon, your Dynamo podcast diving in from thestriker.com. Obviously, we like to remind you that at striker.com you can find all that coverage around Houston Dynamo FC, also the Houston Dash, who unfortunately crashed out of the NWSL playoffs. Everything going on with the other teams in their playoff races, but of course we're focusing on the Dynamo off season, and of course you can find that on thestriker.com. Before we continue, we do have a new sponsor across the board here on the Striker, so I want to take a couple minutes here to give you a quick insight on this. Support for Inside the Hexagon, another podcast here on thestriker.com. It's brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below the waist grooming. Their products are precision engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped's Performance Package, the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. Join over 6 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. You ready? 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code MLS at manscaped.com, if my math is correct, which, it's been a while since I've been in math class. That's about 12 million balls across the world. And of course, we care about our balls here on Inside the Hexagon, especially covering soccer out of the field. Something you got to take care of as well. Give you a couple of talking points here. The Performance Package 4.0 has arrived. I got to test it out, and I got to tell you, this thing, it is a bit of a game changer. It's a little bit easier to use than some other shaving tools that say it's you're not going to guarantee anything here. You got to be careful, but this will help you maybe for more smooth grooming. Let's put it that way. It does come with a cool little light, so you got to test this thing out. Give it a shot. Go to manscaped.com. There's plenty of stuff there. There's already some stuff discounted. So this code MLS will give you an even bigger discount. And of course, maybe if some of the guys in the Dynamo have been better groomed this season, I'm not gonna say. I'm just putting it out there. Maybe that's why some of the people, some of the players this season had a little bit of crooked shot. Maybe had too much of a bush. In the way there, maybe needed to do more aerodynamics. So we'll get into all this stuff. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code MLS at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use the code MLS. Unlock your confidence. And as always, use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. With that, we segue into this podcast, the end of the year, where we're going to trim down on some of the details of what went on, what's going to go on. And without further ado, you know me, I'm Victor Araiza. And again, we're joined as always by the lovely Laura Gomez.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah. We should have, let's just segue here.
Yeah. I think you have a voice for commercials, that's for sure. But yeah, like in the beginning, like you mentioned, the season's finally over for the Dynamo. Very painful to watch, very painful to cover. It did have some highlights, some good games, but I think that there were more games that kind of let down the fan base than actually, lifted them up. I kind of want to ask you what you want to rate the season from 1 to 10.
It has to be below 5 because maybe though, it all depends on how you look at it, right? To me, it was I'll give it a 3. It was a very disappointing season. I think if it had been rightly evaluated and rightly studied, from the beginning. Certain players, from the prior years, I think in a lot of sense there was a lot that could have been avoided this year. I think from that end, lack of preparation led to, I think we said this year before, a lost year. They were, I'm sure they wanted to get their own eyes. Pat Onstad, Ashley Mendelson, maybe even Paulo Nagamura when he was the coach, on what these players could do, on getting their own evaluations out of it. They
Which
wanted
is
to see for
fair.
themselves, but you didn't need to see for yourself. You already saw it the year prior. I mean, that's
Let me finish. I was gonna say, which is fair. We weren't dealing with a team that's been like in the limbo for the past, 5, 4, 7, I don't know, seasons in the last, So yes, I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you. I would give him a 2.5.
And I want to give him a little higher grade because I think there's some salvageable things from this season. Biggest one being Sebastián Ferreira. I think you got yourself a bona fide goal scorer. The problem is you need to give him some support.
But that's what I'm saying. It's really hard to give out the good points without kind of backtracking. Like you just mentioned, yeah, Ferreira, yes, he's good, but then we don't have the tools that he needs to be fully successful. So I think that's why also I would give it a 2.5 out of 10. Maybe even a 3, I guess, in some good days. It's because this is something that has been going on, and it's kind of like making the same mistakes over and over. You have players that, have potential, have the hunger, want to stay in Houston, but for whatever reason, nothing works out. Like the chemistry is not there. There's always a lack. Closing the goals is an issue that the team has had to. It's just a lot of things that other teams have been able to figure it out, that we're doing bad, even as soon as last year, and the Dynamo's still not halfway figured out.
No, I mean, especially teams that are currently in the playoffs, right? How many years was Cincinnati a bad team, and now they're in the playoffs. They got a different type of culture. Maybe ironically enough, they got 2 former Dynamos there with former head coach Dominic Kinnear as an assistant to Pat Noonan. Former defender Jeff Cameron coming back from Europe, and you think maybe if it hadn't been for all those years, and honestly, there is a bad reputation that was gained. There were players, I think, like Cameron that just got a bad taste for the Dynamo, whereas in another situation maybe he would have came back, and that's an experienced player that you can use. And we're going to dive into the MLS salaries here a little bit, but we've talked about what you're paying your defenders. Jeff Crammond, that's the guy they're paying $469,000 in guaranteed compensation. FC Cincinnati. That's value you could have gotten an experienced player, somebody that obviously already means something to the club, so on and so forth. The lack of using the summer transfer window, I think, has to be one of the biggest. And you can tell me Hector Herrera was signed in February on a pre-contract, February, March. He was already pre-signed. He may count for the summer transfer window. And even then, if we see what he's getting paid, some might consider him a bust because he didn't deliver. And I say you have to take into consideration the upcoming World Cup, the fact that he's focused on that. I don't think it's fair to label him a bust this year. But I think for this season, there was certainly more to be desired. But the biggest thing
but I mean, look at the games that he played. He was injured for how many games too. So, I mean, I wouldn't say it was a bust, but I wouldn't say it was a plus. I would say it was kind of like, we'll see what happens.
Well, and the biggest thing about the summer transfer window is you look over a team, again, looking at teams in the playoffs now, like the LA Galaxy. Look how much they changed with the additions of Ricky Puig from FC Barcelona and their 2 Uruguayans in Gaston Brugman and Martin Cáceres. That's a team that their identity got completely changed. They're now a contender. They're a team that's arguably one of the hottest teams going into the playoffs. They could, potentially surprise some people. We'll see what happens here in the upcoming game against LAFC. Obviously, we're taping this in between the first round and the conference semifinals. But that's the thing. I mean, I know people have, as always, given the club and out. Um, oh, it was a tough situation. Matt Jordan left the man, saw the contract. Cool. But there is certain things you can point to, options being picked up, right? Being made, the coaching change and the direction that they went into, the way they utilize the designated player spots. And again, I just said, I think Sebastian Ferreira, good player, but I also said at the time, that wasn't the position of need. I still don't think they are going to fill that position. I think they think an under 22 player is going to be the fix. I've heard Pat Onset's interview with his interviews with Glenn, and I'm honestly concerned. If I was a fan, if I was a season ticket holder, I'd be questioning what the hell they're doing, because and I'm sure they're gonna have the time to prove out that their own way is the right way. But I just think with the decisions that have been made this year, the way they haven't worked out, and the way that it seems to be heading that direction again in 2023, I just think it looks like there's another tough road ahead. But it's a very decisive offseason. It's to be seen, until we see who they hire as a head coach, and some of the player moves that they make. I will reserve my judgment and say if it's a good enough job or not. But I do think there is some concern there, and that's it. I think the other part is just disappointment, because of the stuff we mentioned. Obviously, the results, the fact that all this stuff could have been foreseen, and there wasn't. I don't know. I mean, what else do you take away from it?
I mean, I agree with everything you just said. I just feel, again, it's like this dread of things not being done in a timely manner, for whenever the season starts. It's like that dread of reliving another year like this. It's like a dread of hearing, here's a new coach again, and then being disappointed by the coach that they have appointed. And like I said, like we've mentioned before in different podcasts, I feel like a lot of the coaches have been victims as well of coming to Houston. And like you mentioned before, it's like, a lot of people have left with like a bitter kind of taste. So I feel like the culture does need to have some adjustments. I feel like it needs to make some changes. Not saying that the players are miserable and things like that, but I feel like the team has fallen.
Has the culture changed?
I mean, it's kind of like stale. I think that's what it is.
I think it's new faces, but I think it's the same old Dynamo. I want to see who they appoint as the new head of the club, the new team president. Because I'm sorry, if it's another one of these corporate types, and obviously it's going to be somewhat corporate because he's going to be an executive.
Exactly.
But I hope it's an executive with Houston ties. It's an executive with some local ties that sort of shifted. If not
local ties, again, I go into the experience, at least in the MLS, experience with soccer, experience with
that's another one.
With the game to have some experience, because I mean, look at Jessica O'Neill. She just came into the Dash, but she's made waves. I mean, she's made changes, but she comes from being in the soccer ambience for 9 years and being part of something big that has to do with soccer itself. So the experience is there, not locally, but the experience is there enough to submerge yourself and hit the ground running to do something for the Dash.
Yeah, I still think. Well, I think the Dash still have some headway to go, but yeah, I mean, at least.
Oh yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, yeah. I'm just saying, but to the point of if it's not local.
I'd like to see. I don't think you're going to get Oliver Luck back, but I'd like to see someone with those types of connections locally. I would say maybe even a Hispanic. And I'm not saying that to all racial lines, but I think this is a team with a lot of Hispanic flavor, and there isn't a top Hispanic voice inside the club. There are a lot of decisions. Again,
there's a lot of disconnect too. There's a lot of disconnect that know the game.
And I think that's part of it. The other part of it on the field, I mean, I think, better players. Ultimately, we talked about where this team hasn't changed. I think Pat Onstad gets a lot of pass because he won a championship here. And I think he deserves, and he gets the respect and he gets the acknowledgement of being part of that team. But as a general manager, I do think he has left a lot to be desired in that sense. Little things, right? This was a club that talked about transparency, and I've seen it disseminate a little bit here. As the months have gone on, as the questions have gotten tougher, I've seen the club start to hide a little bit. Simple things like this, the stuff with the contract options. The Portland Timbers already have their stuff announced. And I'm sure the Dynamo already have some decisions made on who they're going to cut, who they're going to keep, regardless of the coach is going to come in. Maybe part of it is the coaching situation. Where is that, by the way? What are they aiming for? What kind of candidates are they? At least 50% of the way decided on somebody, or still looking out?
Yeah, and there's a lot of rumors,
and you hear nothing. Well, that's it. That's all you hear.
That's what I'm saying. It creates a lot of confusion as well for fans, and fans that are thinking of, hey, should I renew my, my tickets for next season? What are we gonna kind of like? There's a lot of fans that have been very loyal fans that are in the crossroads of what are we gonna do? Are we gonna invest the money in going back another year and being let down, or are we gonna be surprised with changes? And going into like the rumors, there's a lot of rumors going around. I saw on Twitter, I was reading, people were retweeting that, El Tata Martino is one of the for sure candidates to be one of the head coach for the Houston Dynamo. And we talked about it too, that would he be a good fit? Would he be the one that kind of brings the team to where it needs to be? Because let's be real, the Dynamo's, it's in the gutter. It's in the gutter. It's been there for a while, and it's, there's some days that there's sunshine, but most of the days it's cloudy. I mean, it's just, like I said, stale. And it's not even completely the whole fault of the players itself. I think it's like it's a whole. I think the club, the ambience, the players, it's just a lot of things that need to be changed. A lot of things need to be shaken up to really create a difference. And there's already, like we were talking off air, that there's a lot of rumors already, saying that this player and this player is not going to be part of of the team next year. So I don't know. What players do you think that are coming back, and what players do you think most likely will not be back?
I think it's hard to say. I still think there's so much unknown here with this regime that I'm not gonna go ahead and try to guess. I think I can tell you who I think should go and should leave, but ultimately they need upgrades across the board, right? I think there are a few guys that saved themselves. Maybe a guy like maybe a guy like an Adam Lundqvist is the only one that kind of saved himself. Everybody else, whether they stay or go, I think it really won't matter. It matters less if they go, right? I mean, I just think. Sure, it's hard to just make a clean sweep, but I think they need some change. They need to be
shaken up to the core.
But ultimately, I think that's one of it. You need better players here, and also the coach is going to be a big decision, because you need somebody a strong character. You need somebody experienced like that. Like who knows if it's going to be Martino? Obviously, he's been linked to other jobs. It's a tough place to convince him to come, especially with the conditions. I think. Maybe that maybe he can only bring one or two assistants or something like that.
But those are things that are being said. But at the end of the day, I think that the Dynamo is going to have to adjust if they want to have a good coach.
No, and the biggest thing is, are they going to be allowed to work? How much of was there micromanagement with Nagamura, right? And that was supposed to be Onstad and Mendelssohn's guy. And I think Onstad talked about in one of his interviews about how they met, almost weekly or something like that. There's rumors out there that maybe there was more tension than we might have seen. So if you're going to bring in an experienced head coach and you're not going to allow him to work, if there's going to be some micromanaging, I mean, that's
the reaction is going to be different than Nagamura's.
But I mean, you're gonna have a guy who's gonna throw around more of his own weight. But that's why I think I don't. And I said this last year, and I've said this on other shows. I mean, I think that's why they don't want an experienced guy like that, or that why they didn't in year one in the first place. I think they need somebody like that in the building that pushes back a little bit. That is a
Demands
soccer
respect.
person that just gives you a different voice. It's not just because somebody has a different opinion doesn't mean that it's a wrong opinion. It's just a different version of seeing the game, right? I think you want an environment. In this club, especially, you need an environment where people are challenged, because it has been such a losing environment for years and years and years and years and years, and everybody keeps bringing this BS about positivity and how we're all a collective and all. No, man, you need people that are going to want to compete. You need people that are going to want to win. You need people that don't want to just kumbaya and you know what?
And that are honest, and I think the word I would say, not only honesty, because I'm sure there's honest people out there, but perhaps aren't scared to really speak their mind, or perhaps some of them have tried to speak their mind and been ignored. So it's a combination of having an open door policy, truly being transparent.
Right.
So they're saying they're being transparent, not only in the sense of the executive level, but also in the sense of the player level. Because I know that, one of the things that, Ted Sieg, when he came in, is that he wanted to meet up with, the supporter section and really hear what they wanted to say, because he wants to implement that transparency and see what they really think. So, I mean, I don't know. I like you mentioned, I feel like at this point we should really know what players and what players are here and what players are not going to be here anymore, as far as of right now. But there's been some names that have been thrown around, like Darwin El Científico Quintero, that they're saying that he won't be coming back. Although he expressed himself that he wanted to be back in Houston because he likes it, but I don't think this was his best season. He had good games.
No, we said it on the show. He can't be your star. He could be a good plus. He could be a guy off the bench if he agrees to that role. He could be a guy that we've seen his talent and his moments. If he's not the guy, if he's just an extra dude coming off the bench, he could be kind of what Vicente Sanchez was a couple years ago. But he can't be your big-time creative player or your most creative player. He can't be that.
Yeah.
You can't expect him to be that. And that's what's been the problem with him here. If you keep him, if it's a cheap option off the bench, if he plays a handful of minutes, absolutely a guy that can help. But he's not an out starter. He can't, for as much as he says he can go 90 minutes, he's not going to give you the same intensity for 90 minutes. And they have to go out and find a playmaker, I still say, to compete with the rest of MLS. You need one. I think it doesn't have to be a number 10. I agree with that. I could be a guy off the wing, whatever. But you need somebody that just propels this attack into something different, that gets some service to Sebastián Ferreira, that manages the strings. And it's not going to be Héctor Herrera. It's not, because it's not his role. I don't know. This is, again, a very decisive offseason. We're now a month in, I think, or just a couple weeks in. But I mean, essentially from when Nagamura was fired, it's been a month, a little bit over a month into the coaching search.
I think some players already know, or they're getting the gist of it. So I'm going to throw out like two other players before we talk about the salaries and money. What do you think about Darwin Seren? In or out?
It's hard to say. And I know the things that the club looks at with Seren is that he's a class dude. And I say that because I've gotten to know him, in bits and pieces personally. So maybe I'm a little biased in that sense. I think he's a guy that can contribute again off the bench. Maybe in those midweek MLS matches, he's a guy that can start you a game or two. But I don't think he's a guy you can depend on continue, and he can't be one of your better players, right? And I think that's the thing with a bunch of these guys.
Yeah.
I think there's a value to a guy like him. Again, especially with some of the FaceTime he gives you in the community. He's a guy that He is a little
known, yeah.
long-winded, but again, like
National
he
team
said,
player.
when he's in front of a camera, he's not afraid to speak his mind. And I think you do need some more of those guys. I just think he's older and obviously gonna have to take a pay cut.
Yeah.
But could be
I
a good
say
experienced guy around younger, better players.
but honestly, I do think that he'll be out. I think that he should have been out this season already. Honestly,
and it wouldn't be a bad move. It wouldn't be a bad move for Kentucky. I mean, a lot of these guys, that's what I'm saying. You can move them out. You could see a place for them here as an experienced guy, but not guys that you can depend on continually, like the game in, game out, give you results. These are guys that are going to have a good game for you, maybe even a great game for you every now and then. And again, experienced voices in the locker rooms. But that's, when you look at their age, that's at the point of the career that they're at.
Last one before, we could go on and on the whole night to really talk about all the players, but what about homegrown Marcelo Palomino?
It's tough because I don't know what the plan for him is, right? It's also tough because every coach has essentially said with their actions that he's not ready for MLS minutes. And he's a guy that, let's remember, he didn't want to sign with the Houston Dynamo. He didn't want to sign a professional contract. He tried his luck in Europe on a couple teams. He went on a couple of trials, I believe, and then he came back and it was when Tab Ramos was announced as the head coach that he put pen to paper. Maybe he's the guy that needs more time in Dynamo too, and maybe that's the plan for him. But again, what's the plan for some of these guys? What's the real plan? What do they see this guy as an MLS contributor and how far down the road, right? Or does he need to go to a different environment as well if they don't see a future in him, right? But to me, he's not. I'll go by what all the coaches have said. He's not MLS ready.
Yeah, the timeline for him, I think, is still. He's still.
And I know the hunger. There's hunger
young.
for the fans. They want to see a homegrown guy in a Dynamo jersey on the field, but
I think that he can.
That.
Exactly, I think that you can still be in Dynamo 2, or even go to a different league and get your minutes in, get your experience in, and then come back. I think that he's still going to have the connection with the Dynamo no matter what, and then come back, more experience with more minutes under his belt. But I think that it's also keeping a player just to keep him because he's homegrown can also burn the player, in my opinion.
Right. Look at Memo Rodriguez. That's the only evidence you need.
You said I was just about to say that. Yeah, because there was a lot of hope with him, and the way, I don't know, I just feel like he's been going down this path that he's gonna have to work really hard to get out of. This season wasn't it for him.
No, and we'll see what they do with him. He's another question mark. As we're kind of winding down on time, do you want to go in? We can talk about it. We'll do this as a tease. In another episode, we'll go a little deeper into some of these contract options. But obviously, the new MLS player salaries were unveiled this week, and one big addition, obviously, that guess what, pushed the Dynamo up to top 10 in team spending, right? Which is something that Testigo has promised. So you can say,
is it the first time that they're in the top 10, or in a while, or ever? I'm trying to remember, the last.
I don't know if we have salaries from those older years, from 06, 07. This is a little bit farther ahead. So I think that from when we've seen salaries, I don't think. But anyways, Hector Herrera, base salary of 4.75 million, guaranteed compensation of 5.2 million. He's the highest paid player for Houston, and obviously in the league, he ranks up there as well. He's
top. He's on. I think he's third right now.
I think he's, at least in guaranteed compensation, he's sixth behind. He'll be fifth because Higuain's retiring, so he'll be number 5. At least if these numbers stay for next season.
Yeah,
it could change, but he's top 10. He's top 10 is the point. Obviously, not a signing that was made based on performance. It was a very a big marketing signing. I don't know that you would have got him here otherwise if you didn't offer him this type of contract. Probably had other offers in Europe. And I think everything combined, lifestyle in the United States.
Close to Mexico.
Right. Coming after the World Cup next year, we'll have, essentially start his MLS career for real. In a different intensity, right? Kind of playing it safe for the World Cup. I don't think that's any secret. But yeah, well, what do you think? I'm cool with it as a Mexican because I know he's a Mexican national team star, but I'm sure there's other people, maybe even fans of the U.S. national team that are saying, "Oh, this guy's overpaid. This guy's a bust."
I mean, I wouldn't consider him a bust yet. I just feel like we mentioned before. I feel like he just had too little. The games that he played weren't a lot, and he was injured in the World Cup. And like we said, I think that he was saving himself. And look at all those players that have recently injured themselves and they're out, out of the World Cup. I mean, it's like a bunch of players in the last week are out, of that big dream of being part of that huge, enormous thing of being a player in a World Cup. So I don't blame him for doing that. I would do that if I was a player. I just think, I think that it's a step in the right direction. It's something that Estonians, Dynamo fans have been pleading for years of getting a star. Is he the star of stars? No. But I think, again, it's a step forward. He's a player that has experience. He's a player that has talent. I think that he could be a part of something special if the other elements are kind of added to that. So I think it's going to be interesting to really see what other players are added to kind of like the roster to really see what Achache really does. And then maybe 5-6 games in of next season, I'll let you know if he was a bust or not.
Well, there we go. A bunch of salary talk. Obviously breaking these numbers down. Where can you find that information? Go to thestriker.com. Get all your soccer coverage there. Sign up if you haven't already. First month is free, so even when you sign up, you don't get charged until a month in. So you get all the MLS playoff coverage and the WSL playoffs coverage, and you might even get some of the World Cup stuff for free there as we Qatar 2022 is next month. So
am I excited? No. Are you excited?
I'm excited for the World Cup. I could care less about Qatar, but
I am excited, but I personally, I feel like for whatever reason, this World Cup has been kind of played down a little compared. Maybe it's because
it's been held hostage by oil money.
Yeah, maybe it's that, or maybe it's also the timing of the year. It's confusing. I don't know. I have mixed emotions. Obviously, I've all the World Cups have had a lot of negative backlash. I mean, Russia did too. But I think it was a little bit more talked about than Qatar. Qatar has been kind of like, yeah, it's there, okay. But not a lot of people are kind of that as enthusiastic, I think. But only time will tell. I know I'm going to watch the game. I'm going to watch Mexico and see what happens and see what they do. And I'm going to watch, some other Southern American teams that are there, not Colombia, of course. But the women, the sub-17, sub-17 are doing really well, but we'll see. It's soccer is soccer, so I'm interested.
Yeah. And the U.S. is back finally in the World Cup, so we'll also.
Oh yeah, for sure. Exciting.
Again, subscribe if you haven't already. Inside the Hexagon, where most podcasts are available. Thestriker.com, also for your soccer coverage. And we'll see you back next week.
Oh, and before we leave, there's a trick or treat event for the kids with the Houston Dynamo and Dash. Well, not with them, but it's by them. Thursday, October 27th, from 5:30 to 8:30 at PNC Stadium. So happy Halloween in case we don't, talk, but until next time.